Welcome to the launch of Goodbye Busy and Hello Happy. And my name is Dr. Olivia Ong. I am the CEO and founder of the Heart-Centered Method Institute Private Limited. We are Australia's only global personal growth and professional development company that helps doctors find meaningful careers in medicine so they find joy and fulfillment in their personal and professional lives. This is the first in the world. We work with hospitals, clinics, medical, and healthcare leaders and their teams in the healthcare sector. Today's topic of my workshop, as part of the launch for Goodbye Busy, Hello Happy, my topic is 3 ways to go from burnout to breakthrough. I'm a physician by trade. I'm also a published author, best-selling author, a high-performance leadership coach consultant, speaker, and online educator. I'm a rehabilitation and pain physician, so I'm dual trained, and that's my main clinical practice. I help people with chronic pain lead active lives despite their pain and thrive without the burnout. I'm a high-performance leadership coach consultant. I also not only help doctors, I also help CEOs, founders, and business leaders in my private coaching service to help them achieve life mastery without the burnout. I've been internationally certified by several world-renowned coaching academies, which include Authentic Education, Mind Valley, and I'm also a Speakers Institute coach and mentor, and also a member of the Physician Coaching Alliance around the world. I'm also most recently an award winner, Silver Award winner of the Disabled Business Excellence Award as part of the Oz Mompreneur 2022 awards recently in Sydney. I've been privately trained by Jack Canfield, and I've also co-authored a book with Jack Canfield most recently, which reached bestseller status. I'm also a global authority on personal well-being, resilience, and burnout, and have been extensively featured in the media for my book that I published last year, the first edition, which is The Heart-Centeredness of Medicine. I've now published the second edition, which is called The Heart-Centered Doctor, Lead Your Life with Self-Compassion and Love. For both books, the foreword was written by Jack Canfield. I've also written a book together with my son, Joseph Lee, on the title, Jojo the Kind Sloth, a children's book about developing self-compassion. And of course, fellow Oz Mompreneurs, today is officially launching Goodbye Busy, Hello Happy. As part of my workshop, I'm one of the co-authors as well, and hence I featured, obviously, Goodbye Busy, Hello Happy in my slide here. Okay. And in this story, I shared my burnout story as well. But my story hasn't always been like that, though, of success, because one fine spring day in 2008, my life changed forever. And I remember that day very clearly. I just had lunch with a good friend and had great conversations with her. After I parked my car in the hospital car park, I was replaying the lunchtime conversations in my head, which brought a smile to my face. I was happy, walking with a spring in my step along the hospital car park, the sun shining on my face. And suddenly, I was hit by a car at high speed. My body was flung into the air, and as I hovered, like a slow motion movie, a few thoughts ran through my head. You see, a few years earlier in my late 20s, I had ticked all the success boxes. I was working as a resident doctor in a reputable hospital, happily married, had my own house and car, and had a great network of friends. In reality, I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I lacked self-worth. And why do so many people who seemingly have it all lack self-worth? Being a perfectionist, I used to beat myself up for the tiniest of mistakes. And I didn't listen to my own needs when work got busy. I was doing my job on autopilot, running around from ward to ward, doing my charts. I even scolded myself for needing to use the bathroom. I actually wish I had a catheter. Then I wouldn't have to stop working to pee, right? How crazy is that? That was how crazy I was. And as a doctor, I was programmed as a Lone Ranger. I did not seek help because that meant I was weak, not capable, dare I say, not competent. My Lone Ranger programming made me feel isolated, disconnected, and helpless, which is exactly how I felt, flying through the air after being struck by an old Toyota Camry, traveling at 60 kilometers per hour. At least I could have picked a Mercedes, right? I landed with an earth-shattering thud. I had a spinal cord injury. I lost the ability to walk. Being a patient on the other side of the healthcare system, the days in the hospital were challenging and an eye-opener. And this time, I really did have a catheter. I felt like a pincushion with drips on my arms and feeding tube up my nose. I had never felt so vulnerable. For months after my spinal surgery, I used all of my willpower and tried my best to move my legs day in, day out, but I couldn't. I felt defeated, so broken, so helpless. I felt angry at the driver, who was an elderly man with severe dementia. And I was lying in hospital by myself, not being able to move, feeling all alone. And I felt such intense grief and loss following my injury. Will I be able to walk again? Will I ever be a doctor? That was my identity. That was all I knew. I'm such a burden to my husband. Will he leave me? And will I ever have kids? If you, fellow Osmanpreneurs and friends, if you have suffered a loss or been through a traumatic event, you know how easy it is to blame yourself for your accident. How it feels to have everybody look at you with pity, to feel sorry for you. It makes you feel sorry for yourself. And my self-worth, which was already low at that point, plummeted to the ground. And I so badly needed to walk again, not only because I wanted to be mobile, but because I wanted to have my identity back, even an identity that lacked self-worth. One day, I heard about Project Walk, a center for spinal cord injury recovery in San Diego, United States. At first, I thought that the state-of-the-art technology was what was going to help me. But after spending 3 years there, I realized that my experience at Project Walk taught me a far more important life lesson: self-compassion. You see, my experience to learn to walk again was the exact opposite of my life as a junior doctor. Instead of being on autopilot, wishing that I had a catheter, to not thinking about going to the toilet or bathroom to pee, I had to take a step back and be mindful of each step I took. Instead of being a lone ranger struggling to seek help, I connected with fellow spinal cord injury survivors, my friends on wheels, bound together by our common humanity and our common suffering, being spinal cord injury. Most important of all, instead of being a perfectionist, beating myself up for the tiniest mistakes I made, I learned to accept myself for who I was. Hi, my fellow Osmanpreneurs and friends. When was the last time you have beaten yourself up for the tiniest mistake you made? Mindfulness, common humanity, and self-acceptance or kindness. These are the 3 pillars of self-compassion. And these were the things that gave me self-worth, not walking again, and definitely not the initial success I had earlier. After 3 years, spending 5 hours every day doing physical therapy at Project Walk, I learned to walk again. I was over the moon, and I went back to my job in Australia, happy, enthusiastic, and ready to tackle new challenges. And research indicates that self-compassion leads to increased productivity. Self-compassion allows you to remain calm in the face of failure, rejection, and criticism. You experience higher well-being and are more productive and successful. And self-compassion also leads to reduced stress as it activates our soothing system, which leads to greater feelings of well-being. And I'll be talking about this later on in the presentation. Slowly but surely, my self-worth started coming back. I went on to pass my fellowship exams in rehabilitation in 2014, and subsequently my fellowship examinations in Faculty of Pain Medicine in 2017. I went on to have two beautiful children whom I adore. And this is my son Joe's 6th birthday last year with a Despicable Me cake. Things you do in lockdown, hey? I built a beautiful life from something that was traumatic and sad. Became a formidable force in the lives of my family and friends. I became more influential around my skeptical medical colleagues who eventually learned to respect me. And most important of all, I learned to respect myself. I rebuilt my identity that has self-worth through self-compassion. And you must be thinking that I've got my entire life together, but I didn't. In 2019, I fell face down with burnout, but at least this time, it wasn't because of my legs. I was exhausted, I had insomnia, and I was cynical and sarcastic. I was a horrible person to be around. At the time, I was working full-time as a pain specialist, just finished my pain fellowship exams, and juggling motherhood with a 3-year-old boy amongst all this and a disability. People will say I was a superwoman. They will say that they didn't know how I managed to do it all. How did I do it all? At service, with hard work and sacrifice. I was on the hamster wheel. Could you all relate to that, being on the hamster wheel? Working hard, trying to be everything for everyone, and that felt like the right thing to do because it wasn't about me, right? As a result, my energy and well-being had been slowly depleting over the years and reached dangerously low levels. I was only getting by. I hadn't been okay for years since my injury, and my injury was way back in 2008. And at this point in time, it was 2019. That's about more than 10 years. I wasn't looking after myself. I was withdrawing and disconnecting. And I was so tired. I was barely holding it together. And I secretly wondered how much longer I could go on like this. It turns out that it'll only be a matter of time before I had my face down moment in 2019, as the full force of burnout took its toll on me. And my story of recovery from burnout didn't start with a dramatic declaration of self-compassion and mindfulness. It started from a place of basic human needs, to care for my family, to provide for my family. If I wasn't okay, we weren't okay. I needed to be okay, and I wasn't. The only possible way was up from that point. I had to recover. I promised myself that I'll never be in this dark place of burnout again. I realized that it was time for me to up the ante in self-compassion, to be 100% responsible for myself and my choices, and to stop giving that power away to other people. I invested in my recovery by learning new tools such as self-compassion and mindfulness to help me feel calm and balanced. I got coaches, life coaches, spiritual coaches, holistic coaches who coached me through my mindset issues and limiting beliefs. And now 3 years on, I'm now a leadership coach for not just medical doctors, also for business leaders, CEOs, and founders. So fellow entrepreneurs like yourselves. I have more energy now. I have more personal time off for myself and my family, and feeling a renewed sense of purpose. And kintsugi, or golden joinery, which is on the slide, is a centuries-old Japanese art of fixing broken pottery. Instead of using clear adhesive to hide the break, the technique uses a special resin dusted with gold that highlights the cracks, as you can see here. The object, through this restoration process, is given a second life, and in this new form, the cracks shine through as beautiful seams of gold. Each piece is more stunning and unique than when it was whole in its original form. And just like kintsugi, my friends, you can overcome burnout through self-compassion. We celebrate the cracks. We honor the struggles. And this is me today. And I've gotten a lot of aha moments from my spinal cord injury and my burnout life experiences, which are: don't take things for granted. Practice self-compassion. We all need help. It doesn't mean we're weak. It's good to have a peer group that understands you. I had that with the spinal cord injury survivors, and then subsequently the entrepreneurs, and especially in this group, the Osmanpreneurs, extremely supportive group of beautiful women who support each other through personal and professional businesses. And also, most importantly, we need to be diligent and be mindful and not to lose track of ourselves. And this is me. Today, I practice, coach, and mentor radical resilience in my role as the CEO and founder of the Heart-Centered Method Institute Private Limited, promoting radical resilience, which is essentially compassionate and resilient leadership in a modern economy, maintaining high performance and well-being, and avoiding burnout. So the next part of my presentation will be on how self-compassion can help you with burnout. So I'll go into a bit of theory and some practical aspects, and we'll finish up with a meditation practice of self-compassion as part of this workshop. So mindfulness is actually at the core of self-compassion. It forms the foundation of self-compassion. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is the ability to be present with whatever is occurring right now at the present moment. And so when difficult emotions arise, in order for us to be compassionate to ourselves, we need to be aware that we are experiencing difficult emotions, right? And now you must be thinking, of course I am, duh. I'm aware of this, duh. It's actually not the case. Often what happens is that it's one of two things. Either we ignore or avoid our difficult emotions because we don't want to deal with them, and so we suppress them. We just take that stoic and carry on approach. If we don't pause and say, I'm having a hard time right now, we can't give ourselves compassion. We need to be aware that we are having difficulty, and we need to do it in a balanced manner. And sometimes we are aware that we are having difficulty, but we are lost in the difficult emotions. I call this over-identification. Our sense of self is completely absorbed by our emotional pain, the fear of whatsoever is happening. And so we don't have the perspective and space to step outside of ourselves and say, hey, you're really having a hard time right now. Can I help you? So you might say that mindfulness is the first step to self-compassion, and it's necessary for us to take a kind stance towards ourselves. And of course, once we take a balanced perspective towards ourselves and our pain, the ideas that we need to treat ourselves with care, understanding, and kindness, as opposed to hard self-judgment. And you know, some people, they're aware that they're struggling, but they use the opportunity to slam themselves to say, you should be different, you know, what's wrong with you, horrible person? And obviously that is not compassion. So compassion is defined by when we get in touch with our own suffering, especially if the mistake is caused by me, or we experience failure or something that we regret doing. The idea is that we treat ourselves with kindness, support, and understanding. But kindness is more than the lack of self-judgment. It's more than the lack of self-judgment. It's really overall desire to alleviate suffering. In fact, most scientists in the compassion literature define compassion as the desire to alleviate suffering and the motivation to do something about it. In many ways, self-kindness is the motivational engine, the emotional core of self-compassion. This feeling of concern, we recognize that we are struggling, and there is this desire to take action to help us in this present moment. We need to have a sense of connection and interdependence in the feeling of self-compassion. So I term this common humanity. So what's the difference between pity and compassion? Other people, right? So a sense of pity means if I pity you, that means I am looking down on you. If I have compassion for you, I have a sense of, hey, I've been there. This is something we all experience. And the same thing with self-compassion. Self-compassion is not self-pity, which is poor me. It's a sense of we all go through this. We are all imperfect. We all have strengths and weaknesses. Compassion means in Latin, passion means to suffer, and com means to come with. So inherent in self-compassion is the sense of interconnectedness. This means that we recognize or we remember that it's important. It's not we logically recognize, it's we remember that we are all imperfect and that everyone leads an imperfect life. Unfortunately, we often forget this. So when something difficult happens in life, or especially when we make a mistake, we have this irrational sense of something has gone wrong. Like, this isn't supposed to be happening, as if what is supposed to be happening is perfection. And if perfection isn't what is happening, something has gone wrong. And this is a problem because it makes us feel abnormal and it makes us feel cut off from our fellow human beings. And this is a very scary emotion. So it kind of adds insult to the injury. Not only that we are suffering, we feel all alone in our suffering, it makes it a lot worse. And self-compassion, because it is connected emotion, it turns that around. It recognizes that, hey, I am not alone. This is a normal part of being a human being. So let me talk a little bit about the physiology of self-compassion. I'm drawing some of this work from Paul Gilbert, who's another well-known clinician who has done a lot of work on self-compassion in a therapeutic context. So what happens is that we turn the threat defense response inward to keep ourselves safe. First of all, the lack of self-compassion or self-criticism. Self-criticism has a particular physiology. Self-criticism taps into the threat defense system. Sometimes it's called the reptilian brain. It's our oldest and most easily triggered nervous system response in reaction to threat. What happens is that we generate things like cortisol and adrenaline, and we get ready to save our lives. So the system was designed for external threats, such as a lion chasing us. What happens to us humans is that when our nervous system responds to threat with fight, flight, or freeze response, the threat usually isn't to our physical self. More often, it's to our self-concept. We do something, we feel foolish, we feel bad, we fear people will judge us. So the fight response manifests as self-criticism. We beat ourselves up, somehow thinking it keeps us in line to keep us safe. Or maybe we beat ourselves first to prevent the pain of other people beating ourselves up. Self-criticism is a form of control. In other words, we try to control ourselves so we can stay safe. The flight response is actually what happens when we isolate ourselves in shame. We know physiologically feelings of shame played a role in evolution. It's a tendency to withdraw from the groups because you have done something to offend the other group members. They may come after you, so we flee and withdraw in shame, and that kept us safe. Or we freeze, and the freeze response manifests as rumination. You get stuck, I can't move, I can't do anything. It's a freeze response in that if I stay still and don't do anything, the danger is going to pass. Maybe if I have this thought for the 47th time, the danger will go away. And self-criticism, isolation, and rumination is really the opposite of self-compassion. So this kicks in as a safety defense. It's not we do this as we are mean to ourselves. We are doing it because we are trying to stay safe. But when we do this, we're also releasing cortisol, adrenaline, which leads to things like greater stress, potentially cardiovascular problems like heart attacks. And what we are doing with self-compassion is that we are tapping into another safety system, which happened after the evolution of reptiles in mammals, and that's the mammalian caregiving system. So what we know about reptiles is when reptile young is born, there is not much attachment with the parent. The eggs hatch, and the little lizards just go off. There's no bond between the children and the parent. The little reptiles are ready to go. They're ready to survive on their own. What happens with mammals is we are born much more immature. We have a longer developmental period that allows us to adapt successfully to the environment. Human beings by far have the longest developmental period, which takes about 25 to 30 years for the prefrontal cortex to develop, which is good for our adaptability, but that meant that the system has to motivate the infant to stay safe next to the parent and to motivate the parent to take care of the infant. And that's the mammalian caregiving system. And this is the system that releases oxytocin, other opiates, other hormones of love and bonding that wants us to feel safe and connected to others. And so what we're doing with self-compassion is, instead of feeling safe through the threat defense system, we feel safe by connecting with ourselves, caring for ourselves. We are activating the mammalian caregiving system as we do this. And so what we know of how self-compassion works in the body, in terms of research, is to give yourself self-compassion. When you do that, you reduce the sympathetic response, and that's the threat defense system. We lower cortisol, for instance, when we give ourselves compassion, and we also increase parasympathetic nervous system response, which is associated with the care system. Things like increased heart rate variability calms us down and allows us to be more flexible. And in terms of brain function, it is not a clear picture emerging yet. Research in terms of brain function and self-compassion is fairly new, but what we know is that it mainly impacts patterns of activity in the dorsolateral and ventromedial prefrontal cortex associated with emotional regulation. And so what's happening with self-compassion is that it's finding a new way to keep us safe and to deal with danger. And because of that, we found that self-compassion is linked to physical health and mental health. So for instance, we have a better immune response to social stresses, better sleep quality, and also fewer physical symptoms of ailments such as headaches, aches, and pains. That's because our mind is in a healthy state. Our body tends to be in a healthy state. And so how does self-compassion prevent burnout? It allows us to better cope with work-related tension in our businesses, and therefore prevents the development of burnout, which is so prevalent in us entrepreneurs. Self-compassion slows down or interrupts the gradual development of burnout. And it is possible for someone to be exhausted, but copes with using self-compassion principles, maintaining a balanced perspective towards negative events. And that happens a lot in business. Holding a compassionate stance towards the self. We need to be compassionate to ourselves in our business. Being open to observing, yet not becoming consumed by the exhaustion, and thus preventing the next stages of burnout. And I want to take this opportunity to do a short meditation process with all of you. It's a self-compassion practice that I teach my coaching clients as well as my patients too. It's called self-compassion break, and it only takes about 5 minutes, okay? And I want you to gently close your eyes. When you notice that you're feeling stress or emotional discomfort, see if you can find the discomfort in your body. Where do you feel it the most? Make contact with the sensations as they rise in your body. Now say to yourself slowly, this is a moment of stress or difficulty. That's mindfulness. Other options include, this hurts. Ouch, this is difficult. Number 2, stress and difficulties are a part of life. I want you to say that slowly to yourself. Stress and difficulties are a part of life. That's common humanity. Other options include, I'm not alone. Others are just like me. We all struggle in our lives. This is how it feels when a person struggles in this way. Now put your hands over your heart or wherever it feels soothing, feeling the warmth and gentle touch of your hands, and say to yourself again, may I be kind to myself. Or another way of saying this is, may I give myself what I need, or I've got your back. See if you can find words for what you need in times like this. If you're having difficulty finding the right words, imagine that a dear friend or loved one is having the same problem as you. What would you say to this person? If your friend will leave with just a few words in mind, what would you like those words to be? What message would you like to deliver, heart to heart? Now see if you can offer the same message to yourself. Okay. Thank you, fellow Osmompreneurs and my friends out there who are watching this workshop. I thank you for watching this presentation. And if any of you would like to know more about this topic on burnout and how it may affect yourself in your business as an entrepreneur, or your team members even as businesses which are growing and scaling, and you might have team members who are burnt out as well. If you'd like to know more about this topic of burnout and how I can help you solve that problem of burnout with my various coaching programs and services, Please email me at hello@drolivialeong.com, or feel free to connect with me on my social media on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And I'll stop sharing my screen. And before I say goodbye, this is not goodbye, this is see you later. So just a reminder for all of you to remember to live your life or lead your life with self-compassion and radical resilience. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching this presentation. Thank you.